Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Bryant Balcom, once again here with publisher Andrew Jones inside the Smith Center. We're back for another edition of Three Things following North Carolina's 67-66 win over Pittsburgh. Once again, another close game for the Tar Heels, something we've been accustomed to in the past few weeks. But AJ, the first thing I want to talk about is actually the beginning of the game at UNC with a week off. We're going to find out rather quickly how much adjustments they've made and really just kind of what they did and what they learned from that break. And it started off a little different. Ben Luben came in and was a difference maker. And from the opening tip, he scored 9 of UNC's first 12 points. And talking to him post-game, Hubert post-game, that was kind of a bit of an emphasis for UNC. They took that game plan from the first game against Pitt, saw some place they can make adjustments, and use that week to really grow and fix some of their offensive weak points.
Yeah, Elliot Cadeau said that, Pitt switched 1 through 5. They talked about that up in Pittsburgh 10, 11 days ago, but that gave them trouble. So they saw something on film that they could exploit, and it was the big getting a guy pinned and having almost an open lane to the basket, because a lot of Luben's buckets were roll-oriented. He didn't have to – it wasn't like a pick and roll, but he would shade and roll, or he would just move a little bit and force their defense to react, and he got open, and he was able to turn, catch, and score. He's efficient around the basket. He's been efficient around the basket all year. He knows how to get the ball in the basket when he's near it. He had a really nice finger roll very, very late in the game, which was a huge bucket for him. And he's just got a solid touch. He gets the roll on a lot of stuff that hits the rim, that bounces around the rim and goes in. I think this was a season-high shot attempts for him. So
having double digits all season in shot attempts.
Yeah, so we saw them make one change. I thought there were a couple other changes that we saw, too. Hubert talked about some of them after the game. This was actually a very informative Hubert Davis postgame press conference, I thought. One of his more informative ones. A couple other changes very quickly to totally deviate from the initial thing of the three things. First of the three things here, he went big with the first substitution. They actually had it on the floor. RJ, Ian, Drake Powell, Withers, and Washington. So they were 6 feet, 6'4", 6'6", 6'9", 6'10", and RJ got open looks. It looked like RJ last year when he played with a bigger lineup. So that's there, and RJ got really quality open shots, scored 8 quick points. We also saw them double the ball screen some. They really messed up some of the ball screens, and they switched everything the last 10 or 12 minutes of the game. They don't always switch everything. In fact, at one point, they had some issues with switches where I think Elliot Cadeau had to
he gave with a good two-handed shove.
But that was actually one time where if it wasn't a mandatory switch, maybe Elliott didn't have to switch on that one. Jay would end up committing a foul on the drive. But I think the going to Luben and having early success with it set the tone to put them in position to have a chance to win. Because if they recognize that and they tell the kids, here's a way we can exploit this, and then it doesn't work, what do they got? So it was extremely important that they went to him early, that he capitalized. In fact, with about 8 minutes left in the first half, only 3 Tar Heels had scored, I think. And he was rolling. So I think he finished with what, 17?
17, yep. Season high 17.
Yeah, so this was an efficient game for him, and they needed him late. And he got in foul trouble again. There were a couple of times I thought he was going to pick up number 5, but didn't. I thought Pitt should have done a better job of going at him. They tried to score too much with the guards late. They should have gotten Luben out of the game, because he was a difference maker today, maybe for the first time this season. But he was a difference maker because it was part of a plan, and they actually executed a plan. That's been one of our chief criticisms, that whatever their plan is, they don't execute it, or they don't have much of a plan. So credit the staff, credit Hubert and the staff for recognizing that and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do with a 6'8" guy in the post against bigger front line. The second thing was the kids executed it. In fact, their first 6 buckets were assisted.
Yep.
And they had a pretty high assist to field goal rate for the game. But everything, the whole stage was set early when they did that. And they had some confidence to go back and get a few more buckets from him as well. And certainly Pitt started defending him a little bit better. and they had to honor and respect him more, and it opened up some other stuff. There were some mid-range jumpers that were open for Carolina today that haven't been open lately, and part of that was because of Luben's presence on the floor.
And one thing I want to point out about him, and we mentioned it when Jalen Washington subbed in the first half, is he was also ready to get the basketball. There were times he was wide open, but he was posting up, actively trying to get the ball down low and make something happen, and that was part of it. We haven't always seen that either. And you mentioned the execution. Hubert Davis in his post-game press conference said UNC has the answers to the test. They just have to write them down, and there's been a kind of a struggle with translating that, knowing what to do but not actually following through with it, and they did that late today. And, Luben, like I said, first 9 points in the second half, but he had a critical in the last 20 seconds of the game. UNC had two chances to really, if not put it away, make it tough for Pitt to come back. They missed two front ends of 1-and-1s, Luben and then Seth Trimble, but they still found a way to win, something that they haven't done. This is with 5 minutes left, it was 5 points or less in the game. That's the 12th time in 24 games it's been within 5 points in the final 5 minutes. So UNC's used to these close games, and while they didn't really convert offensively, they made the plays defensively. And even though they didn't come up with this full court, I would say the defensive tip by Luben, they still just made plays and found a way to win, even with those free throws.
Well, very quickly before I hit on their second thing, which is that close of the game, let me go back to very quickly to Luben and give kudos to the guards for continuing to look inside. We've seen them go to the bigs early in some games, get a couple of buckets, and then they disappear, and it's dribble, drive, and fall afterward. That wasn't the case. They had a few stagnant possessions where when things broke down, they didn't really respond well to it, but overall, they continued going to him, so credit them for that. I wanted to add that with the last part. As far as the close of the game, you're sitting next to me. A bunch of us in the media are up there, and you missed two front ends of a 1-and-1 inside of 19.8 seconds. Pitt ends up inbounding the ball right here in front of where I'm sitting with, 13 seconds left. You figure with Lowe on the floor, because Lowe had not fouled out. I know he did foul out.
He fouled out, yeah.
They still had Leggett. They still had Zach Austin. They still had Corin. They still had their guys. And they've got putback guys and all that. And they were dominating Carolina on the glass in the second half. You just had to think, by missing those front ends, that this is a game they're going to lose. But that sequence, when Pitt inbounded the ball, you just mentioned Luben tipped it, and the ball went all the way over there. I don't know how many hands it touched. I have not watched the replay, and it ended up with Drake Powell almost corralling it, but it goes out of bounds. There were 7.3 seconds left by the time that scramble was 6 seconds. It went from 13.3 to 7.3. That's an eternity on a basketball court. And Carolina showed a sense of desperation to get the ball there. And I talked to a couple of the guys, and they said we weren't desperate to get the win, but we played like we were desperate to get the win. And that last little sequence, that chaotic sequence right there, exemplified the level of desperation they played late in the game with. I'll go back to a bunch of others. For example, at Louisville, last week at Pitt, when they get closed out, they would always say one of the reasons was they didn't elevate their level of intensity to match the opponent in the late game situation. They had a lead at Pitt last week with 3.5 minutes left? And they got outscored 14-2 to close the game. So what they did tonight, to their credit, is they elevated the intensity to match or surpass Pitt's. And because of that, they were in position to make those plays. Luben missed his free throw, and he ended up knocking the ball out of bounds on Diaz-Graham because he couldn't corral it. So he didn't stop. He went and made the play, and that could have been a winning play for Carolina. They didn't get anything from it. They got the ball out of bounds, but it still could have been a winning play. So I think the fact that they did something that they didn't do the last time they were in this situation, and they did it against a better team than maybe BC when they did that to BC at the end of regulation, then beat them in overtime. They really needed this. They needed to beat a club that's had their number, so to speak, a club that they don't like, a club that doesn't like them. You could sense it. I had to walk through the Pitt coaches, go into the press room before the game. Jason Capel's one of them. I know Jason. I've known him for a long time. Jason's not going to look at any of us and say hello. He is dialed in. Tim O'Toole dialed in. The whole staff dialed in. They've got a lot of former head coaches on that staff, and they were dialed in. I thought Pitt was ready to go, but Carolina was much more ready to go. I mean, Carolina made Pitt look like it was an extension of their crappy performance against Virginia Monday night. So I think the energy Carolina had to start the game, which they do have sometimes, and then it tapers off like it did in this one. And RJ talked about that. And it happened in the second half, too, for a while. They picked it up when they had to. That scramble sequence, even though they didn't get the ball, they forced 6 seconds off the clock. They forced Pitt to bring the ball in from way over there and have to go the length of the court. And that meant the whole defense had Ismail Leggett in front of them. So he had to go by guys in order to get a shot off. And it was a tough shot, didn't go in. Carolina got the win. So that play right there signifies a moment in time where this team saw what matching the intensity or surpassing it in those last minutes can do for you. And they got to win. They overcame those 2 missed free throws, and they also overcame Ian Jackson not scoring, by the way.
And you mentioned their intensity, and time again, you can point to the Florida game, the first Pittsburgh game, Louisville. They've been outplayed, outscored, out-hustled, whatever, you name it, they've been outplayed by their opponents. And I was looking back at some stats before we came out here, and Pitt didn't score for the final 2:03 of regulation. And I can count on 2 hands at least when you hear a stat like that, so-and-so went scoreless over the last couple minutes. It's usually UNC being held scoreless and UNC missing these shots and UNC being the one that's not making the play. And today, yes, they did miss 2 front ends of 1-on-1, but they were making the plays. They were doing the things that they needed to do to win. And as of late, we haven't been able to say that. And
no. And think of the last 5 weeks. When they've gotten these one-possession wins, they've been on the defensive end most of the time. When they get the win, they got Marcus Burton should have hit the layup, but he didn't. So somebody did something enough to get a little bit of credit for that miss. They blocked the shot against State. They made the inbound play, Drake Powell defending the inbound. By the way, this just goes to show you the intricacy of coaching. Drake Powell defended the inbound play against BC on the baseline and right here in front of BC's bench. It affected the hell out of it. He wasn't defending the inbound today. It was Elliott because Powell was on Leggett. Hubert said, we got to, because he knew they get the ball to Leggett, he could score on anybody else. Maybe even Seth. Seth was on Diaz-Graham, who has like 7-8 inches on. They had to pick their poison, but they made a play. So they've been in these situations where when they win these one-possession games, they're always the basket's always to their back. They have to step up. Even UCLA. I mean, Elliott made that play late at UCLA where he forced the ball handler to make a mistake. He was physical there. So for all the criticism that we and everybody else has levied on this team, today you should celebrate, if you're a Carolina fan, the fact that they overcame some of those things and they kind of manned up some and they got themselves a must-win, a crucial win. So if they would have lost, people would be bashing them. If
100%.
If scores there, people are going to bash them because then we're going to pick at all the things they did wrong. I still think that there would have been some things to gain from it, but the problem is you don't gain when you lose in February, especially when you're on the wrong side of the fence. So they gain, and they got to win. Doesn't matter if it was by 1 point. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if Carolina, was 3 for the last 15 to close out the first half, shooting the ball. The only 3 baskets put backs by guys who actually missed. Doesn't matter. They went through a 1 for 10 stretch in the second half when it looked like they were going to have a chance to build a bigger cushion. Pitt goes on a 13-2 run. It was 60-49. Pitt goes on a 13-2 run. And Carolina responded to it. So I think that's the kind of thing you can build on, but more than anything, the coach could look at it and say, see, you did it. You overcame allowing a 13.2 lead. You overcame missing those 2 free throws. You overcame Ian not scoring. You overcame that scramble not going your way. Drake almost had it. He didn't. But they still made the stop. So when you're 14-10 now, you have to find things to celebrate when you win other than just a win. There are a lot of things to pick at, But right now, I think the focus should be on the reasons why this team won, and it was an absolutely a must-win game. Right.
And one thing I want to point out about that real quick is, after the game, Michael Coe was talking to Vanal and Luben, and he had blood on his shirt or jersey, and he didn't know where it came from. And I think it kind of also emphasizes a good point of they won a physical game too. Pitt is a physical team. They do foul a lot, but they're a team who is going to punch you in the mouth. And UNC, I think it goes to show like that they stepped up against a team that's physical too, and that's important for them.
Yeah, and Hubert said Jay Wash was going to check in, and he called him back because Vanal and Luben just got his fourth foul. Because Luben went in, picked up the fourth foul immediately. I think it was his fourth foul. Third.
It was fourth foul right under. Yep.
And he called Jay Wash back because he had blood up here, and he put James Brown in the game for a minute, and Jay Wash got attended to. You picked out the fact that he was bleeding from where we sit, which is 35,000 feet above in a United Airlines or something.
Mile High Stadium, basically.
Yeah, but so yeah, they had blood and they won. They missed those two front ends and they won. He went over and they won. They didn't get that scramble and they won. If you're a Carolina fan, you should say, man, they did every little scrape, scratch, and claw to get a win. And you should be fine with that because this team hasn't always done that.
And unfortunately for them, they can't, you want to celebrate, but you can't celebrate too long because a quick turnaround not just a quick turnaround, but a quick turnaround at Clemson. I'd argue one of their toughest games of the ACC schedule. And it's a game that's going to be another tough challenge for UNC. It's a Clemson team who is good, who's experienced, who's talented. Like I said, it's on Monday night, a quick turnaround, and it's a game that UNC has to go ahead and start prepping for. It's just a tough, another quad one chance, but also a tough game for them as well.
Yeah, we're not going to post a drop between now and then because it's too quick a turnover. And what this means, we're more looking ahead to Clemson. Right now, Clemson and Duke are playing in the second half. We have no idea what the score is. So when we record these three things, we don't know Clemson's result. So, but I don't think it's going to matter. First of all, the ACC, shame on them for having Clemson play Duke and Carolina in a 3-day period. That's just ridiculous. They get 18 teams. You could figure out a schedule that works better than having that happen. Okay, I'm off my soapbox on that. There's a lot of.
Yeah, I went and checked the score real quick. It's 9:40 left. Clemson is up 56-49 with 9 minutes left.
Yeah, okay. Clemson's really good, and they had a crappy loss to Georgia Tech at home this past week, and
3 overtimes too.
3 overtimes. One of those caught looking at. Clemson had possessions late in all those games, in all those sessions. Second half overtime.
Give up a game time bucket at the buzzer to go to the first overtime.
Yeah, and they had a couple, and the wrong guy has the ball. They did not handle that well. They lost. That happens sometimes. Win or lose, Clemson cannot. They'll be fired up for Carolina because they're always fired up for Carolina. It's probably an advantage for Carolina going in there 2 days after Duke because Duke is the road show in the ACC right now. It's not North Carolina. I can attest to that because I've been to all the road games, and they're not the road show in the league right now. Duke is. So maybe that will help. But the bottom line is Clemson's so much better than Carolina that the Tar Heels are going to have to play a lot better than they did today to beat the Tigers. Now, the way they started with a little bit better defense,
yep,
that would be good. The way they finished with that intensity, they need to bottle the last couple of minutes. It's sort of the last 19.8 seconds. They need to bottle that, tag it, and take it to Clemson. Take it to Little John Coliseum because they're going to need that for 40 minutes. Because if you think Pitt's physical, Clemson is physical with a purpose. Clemson isn't just physical to be physical. There is a method behind their physicality. Carolina doesn't cut a whole lot. If they do cut, Clemson will bump the cutter. But Clemson will play the screens well. They won't let the pick and roll happen that much. It's a really well put together team that has a lot of parts that the Tar Heels can struggle with on the glass. I mean, who's going to deal with Ian Shefflin? Not Drake May or Drake Powell. He's a quarter the width of Ian Shefflin. So that's a big task. Tar Heels got the must win today. I don't think Clemson's a must win. However, I do think they need to beat Clemson or Duke and win all the rest of those games to go into the ACC tournament in a position where a couple of wins and maybe they get in to the NCAA tournament. They had to get today. If they would have lost today, they would have had to win out in the regular season. It would have just been too damaging. So go to Clemson. If you can get a win, Suddenly you're 15-10, and you got a second quad one win. You got a couple other games that are sitting out there that could become quad one games. Then you have 5 days before you go to Syracuse, a team that they're better than and should beat, but it's a very difficult assignment.
Yep.
So this is an enormous game Monday night. I don't think it's a must-win game, Ryan, but it's a must-compete game.
Yeah,
they can't get pounded. They can't get run at.
If they have another performance, and I won't even say like Duke, but I'll say close to the performance at Duke, it's not only does it not they don't look like a tournament team, but it's not something that you can really be confident in, or it's February. There's not much. If you get blown out 2 of your last 3 games, there's not much positive things you can take from that kind of performance. But like we said, quick turnaround. You'll be there.
Yep.
And
they got to bang on the glass. They got to do so without fouling.
They got outright bounded today too. So again,
and Hubert's got to figure out a way to unlock Ian Jackson. We should probably talk about that for a second, since we're not going to do another video between now and 3 things Monday night. But Ian, 3 shots, did not score. 5 of the last 6 games he's been in single digits. The one he wasn't was BC. He scored 19. In the other 5 games, he's averaged 6 points a game. He's attempted in 45.2%. I did all this before we came out here. 45.2% of his shots in the 6-game span are from 3. They got to figure out a way to get him going again. And the 4-guard lineup, and he's the 4, there's not room to shake and bake a maneuver. He just looks out of sorts. And I kind of like that big lineup. I liked it because RJ got shots. And RJ's getting catch and shoot shots with no resistance, which rarely happens with this team. That's a good thing. And then you got Ian at the 2. If RJ's scoring, and they keep that lineup out there long enough, and you're getting some stuff from the bigs, and you notice how Drake Powell hit some jumpers from the free throw line extended a couple of times. He wasn't getting those when he's playing the 4. So they look different. I think that they should play that lineup more, and they're probably going to have to against Clemson because they're big. They're big and they're strong. But you got to get Ian going. They're not going to beat a good team away from Chapel Hill with Ian Jackson playing 22 minutes and not scoring. And by the way, he sat out the last 7:07 of this game, and his last shot attempt was, I think, with 3:40 left in the first half. Hubert's got to get that straightened out because he's their best offensive player, best scorer anyway. He's their best scorer.
I mean, RJ is, let's say, somewhat the leader. He's the veteran presence, but Ian is their best offensive player and their best
scorer. He's the best scorer.
Best scorer that they have. There's no 2 ways about it.
RJ's a better college player at this moment. Ian's a better scorer, and this team needs to score. They once again were in the 60s. You take away the BC game, this club's averaging under 70 points a game in ACC play going back to the Louisville game. What are they now? They're 7-5. That's 11 games. So 10 of the last 11 games, they're averaging under 70 points a game. That's not a good. We talked all year about how this is not a great offensive team. Well, they're showing it in their productivity. Now, their efficiency was better today. The game slowed. The game was fast and slowed. And they handled some of that fairly well. Part of it was they defended better in stretches. But they got to get Ian going, period. It's 5 out of 6. After he went 7 games, scoring 18 or more each game, 6 of them he had 20. And he was getting the line. I mean, he's not shooting. He's not attempting free throws. He has 10 free throw attempts in the last 6 games. He's not playing his game. And Hubert's got to figure out a way to get him going because they need him moving forward.
Yep, and I mean, it's a tough task, but we'll see if they can do that Monday against Clemson because they'll absolutely need a strong performance from him if they want to have any chance to win. Like we mentioned, quick turnaround at Clemson. You'll be there. Another big one for the Tar Heels. But till then, I'm Bryant. He's AJ, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.